Welcome to The Author Show, where we feature new authors and books, from fiction to self-help and everything in between. You'll find it all at theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. And now let the show begin.
Hello and welcome back to the show. This is your host, Don McCauley. Today we're welcoming to the program author Elsie McKenney, and she is the author of Eve's Covering. Before I bring in today's guest, a quick reminder, the selected interviews are available at our website, as well as on major platforms like Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, and many more. Elsie, how are you?
I'm doing great today, thanks.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, I'm a mom and Mimi, or grandma. I have 3 wonderful, darling little grandkids, and I love writing and reading and talking with you all today.
So tell us about your book.
Okay. This twisty thriller, Eve's Covering, is the 2023 Reader's Favorite Gold Medal winner, inspired by my escape from a cult. Here's just a sneak peek. Eve is troubled by the mysterious circumstances surrounding her cousin Ellis's death, but the police won't take her seriously. When Eve's family becomes entangled with a religious cult, she struggles with the ideas and leaders who now assume control over her life. But when her rebellion threatens the safety of her family, she gives in and joins the cult's mission, an orphanage in the Soviet Union, or at least that's the mission on the surface. When Eve discovers the orphanage is just a cover for something much more sinister, she sets out to rescue her friends, who slowly disappeared one at a time. The trouble is, she knows too much. If she's caught, it will be the end of them all.
Now, who did you write your book for specifically? Who's your target audience here?
I wrote Eve's Covering to intrigue and inspire today's young readers. The reader's favorite judge even said that Eve's Covering will keep curious young adult readers enthralled. He said that my writing style was fast-paced with plenty of dialogue, and the plot events and characters keep readers in suspense. But the more intriguing thing, he said, was that I know today's teenagers, that they are interested in the supernatural, the ghosts and young romance with all its, up and down emotions. And he says that the book incorporates all 3 of those.
So could you say there's any type of central message or perhaps underlying theme that you would say runs throughout your book?
It's hope. Hope is important because it's what helps get you unstuck and keeps you moving forward through life's difficulties. The young adult, this age group is suffering a mental health crisis right now. And I think it's especially prevalent in the last few years. Many are depressed, plagued with feelings of hopelessness, loneliness, and self-doubt. Readers, when they read Eve's Covering, will discover they aren't alone in the hard situations they find themselves in. If Eve, who is just a regular girl, can persevere while she's trapped in a cult, and summon the courage to break free, they can break free from what they're facing as well. And when they see their friends struggling with things such as bullying or living in unhealthy relationships, they can take action. In the voice of Eve, don't give up on those you care about.
So if you had to choose, what would you say is the single most important idea you're sharing in your book that's really going to add value to the reader's life?
Think for yourself. Be inquisitive. Ask questions. Don't blindly follow a movement or a person. Emotional manipulation, threats, and smoking mirrors are convincing. If you aren't careful, you can get sucked into the candy-coated lie. There are both good and bad people out there, and you have to be able to tell the difference to navigate through their deception, or you're going to get hurt. And if you look closely, it just might surprise you which people are good and which people are bad. In Eve's Covering, the cult leaders create emotional dependence labeled as mentorship, and then tighten their grip, demanding obedience with zero allowance for constructive criticism. They say, you can't survive without us. You need us to tell you what God wants from you, and these miracles aren't going to happen if we're not around. The reader will see the value in encouraging others to be brave and discerning. When Eve struggles to know what is true, she doesn't give up searching. When the Bible becomes her lens, she is able to discern right and wrong and take action.
So if you were asked to compare your book with any book out there we might already be familiar with, which book would it be and why?
Well, readers' favorite judge, Jamie Michelle, stated that Eve's covering is wholly unique. That means it's different. So I had to put together a couple of comparisons to give you a taste for this twisty thriller. Take Twilight, for example. It shares the same supernatural feel as Eve's covering. In Twilight, Bella is intrigued with a vampire and can't help but be drawn to him. In Eve's covering, upon seeing the cult leader's reflection in a window, Eve compares him to Dracula. Also, the sweet romance in both these books is overshadowed by dark forces that seek to destroy it. Then there is The Hunger Games, which shares the same cult vibes as Eve's covering. It's not the cult leaders demanding loyalty, though, but the capital of Panem. Furthermore, in The Hunger Games, the tributes must kill each other, the last one standing claiming victory. The story begins with Katniss sacrificing herself for her sister. In the process, she ends up saving not only her whole family, but her entire world. In Eve's covering, Eve's friends start to disappear when the cult leader shows up in her town. When her cousin's daughter is kidnapped, Eve realizes, to her horror, that the girls are being trafficked, and she sets out to rescue them, even if it means she must sacrifice herself.
So what compelled you to write this book?
My nightmares. Every night, the cult leaders kidnapped my children, and I chased after them frantically in cars, buses, on foot, through mountains. I woke up exhausted and fearful. I cried at the drop of a hat. Everything just was so sad to me, so I started journaling just to help me get my emotions under control. Then I tried to write a memoir, but that was too painful. I just couldn't imagine letting anyone into that secret place the cult had possessed in my life. So I turned it into fiction, and after 100 pages, my nightmare stopped. I suppose because I had faced my demons, but I hadn't destroyed them yet, because years later, when I returned to my childhood home, the setting of Eve's covering, the flood of those memories came back to me in full force, and I experienced PTSD. The nightmares returned along with an unexplainable fear and tears. So I put pen to paper again and finally published Eve's Covering, a YA thriller, in December of 2022. It won a gold medal in the 2023 Reader's Favorite International Book Awards. It was truly a spectacular moment stepping out on that stage and accepting the award. For me, it meant not only I had succeeded as an author, but I had also beaten the cult leaders. Hoorah!
So how did your family become entangled in this cult?
My family met the cult leaders when I was just 10 years old. I'm going to refer to them as Simon and Marigold Blackwell, as I renamed them in Eve's Covering. Our family soon became fast friends. My parents were fascinated with these people who claimed to have a connection to the supernatural realm, and the Blackwells enjoyed many meals at our house, and no little sum of pocket change my parents placed in their offering plate. It wasn't long before we left the Maple River Mennonite Church that I had grown to love in the tiny town of Brutus, Michigan. I was baptized there when I was just 8 years old, and I eagerly learned 300 scripture verses through their Bible memory program. I was sad to leave, but it was also exciting to be a part of this new group that claimed to have a direct line to God. Now, Webster's dictionary first defines a cult as a religion regarded as unorthodox or spurious. But I want to get to the second one. It says great devotion to a person, idea, object, or movement, or work, such as a film or book. What I'm referring to is the second one, because our lives revolved around this family, who became our guide into the supernatural world. When I was 12, my family sold everything, packed up what few possessions would fit in a motorhome, and traveled with the Blackwells. Simply put, we joined their cult.
So, what was the inciting incident of this book?
My novel begins with the disappearance of an acquaintance. Eve, the protagonist, who plays me in the story, knows something is just not right. She can feel it, but she just can't put her finger on it, so to say. But she keeps her eyes wide open as far as the Blackwells are concerned, the family's friends. The story unfolds as Eve sets out to prove that there is something sinister about this self-proclaimed prophet healer and his seer wife.
So, could you describe the main antagonist in your book?
Mr. Blackwell is charming, charismatic, and handsome. A self-proclaimed prophet and apostle willing to sell snake oil to get what he wants. In fact, in Eve's covering, only a few characters ever realize he is a con man. In my sequel, which is my current work in progress, Mr. Blackwell is resurrected and lives a double life as a part of the criminal underworld. To most people, he is noble and good. But unfortunately, Eve gets too close and must decide how far she will go to uncover the deception and fight for the truth and for the lives of those she loves.
Now, Eve's covering takes place in the 1980s. What do you think makes it meaningful for today's readers?
I mentioned before that the main theme of Eve's covering is hope. This message is timeless. Furthermore, it is a coming-of-age story, which also makes it meaningful for today's audience. The storyline dives deep into the cultivation of trust through family and social relationships as Eve becomes a young woman, and the terrifying consequences that occur when someone violates that trust.
So how did you escape the cult and return to normal life?
God, in His grace, rescued me. He opened my eyes to the truth, and I realized I was in a dangerous situation. I immediately fled from evil without thought of where I was even going or how I would survive. You see, I was alone in Thunder Bay, Ontario, with less than $5 in my pocket. When my panic concerning the cult subsided, another anxiety took its place. What would I do about food and shelter? I wandered between the bus stop and the mall, just trying to survive. But God didn't rescue me from the cult to leave me stranded on the streets. I called my aunt and uncle, and they came and took me back home to Michigan. But my home was gone because the cult leaders had persuaded my parents to move to Florida in my absence. So I stayed with my sister. She attended a little church in the country, the perfect place to heal. It's here where I met David, my husband and soulmate. With his help, I was able to put the pieces of my shattered life back together.
So have you had any feedback yet from readers?
Yes, I have. Most of it good, I'm delighted to say. Just this morning, one of my followers on TikTok commented, "Mr. Blackwell is giving me bad vibes. I'm about 60 pages in and absolutely invested." But on a more personal level, someone recently reached out to me and said that they had never known anyone else that had escaped a cult before. All these years, they thought they were the only one. They thought they were alone. They were comforted to know that they weren't alone in their situation.
So in your opinion, who should buy your book?
Young adults who enjoy the roller coaster action of a thriller will eat up Eve's covering. But this story has many layers, and so anyone interested in cults will also want to buy it. And readers who seek strong female leads will want to get their hands on it too. And also, people who just like books based on true stories will want to buy Eve's covering. Judge Anne-Marie Reynolds says it best. This gripping tale is suited to all ages of readers, not just young adults. And the fact that it's based on real life and touches on very real subjects makes it a must-read book.
Do you have a website?
Yes, I do. Just go to elsiemckenny.com. You'll find my blog, Occult Exposed, where I dive deep into the life of the religious cult I grew up in. I unpack the ugly truth and tell how the cult leaders manipulated and mesmerized their followers. And while you're there, you can sign up for my newsletter and receive updates and notifications on my audiobook and my sequel. Yes, I'm currently working on the audio version of Eve's covering. As the narrator, I hope to bring depth of emotion to the characters in the story that I live through. Eve's Covering is also the first in the Chronicles of Eve's trilogy, and I'm delighted to say that I'm halfway through the sequel. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter to receive updates and to be notified when books 2 and 3 launch.
Well, this has been just great. Our guest today has been Elsie McKenney, and she's the author of Eve's Covering. Elsie, thanks very much for being with us today.
Oh, you're welcome, and thanks for having me.
This is Don McCauley wrapping up another edition of The Author Show. Go out there, buy the book today, and please share this interview with your friends so that they too have the opportunity to discover our guests and their work. The Author Show can be accessed at any time at theauthorshow.com, and for easy access to the show on your mobile devices, you can just download our app in the App Store or Google Play Store or through the QR code on our website. And whether you're an author who would like to be featured or a reader in search of new books to read, The Author Show is a great place to start. Check us daily as we continue to introduce wonderful authors of very interesting books on The Author Show.
Thanks for listening to The Author Show. Find out more about authors and their work at theauthorshow.com. Theauthorshow.com. Tune in next time to another great author on The Author Show.